On this Tuesday night, shake-ups on Parliament Hill and Capitol Hill. Canada's new speaker makes history in the House of Commons.
Please treat me like that new car and don't give it a dent on the first day.
So does his American counterpart, but for all the wrong reasons.
The office of Speaker of the House is hereby declared vacant.
Going nowhere fast, why rush hour ground to a halt for thousands of commuters in Toronto. Decision day in Manitoba, the key ridings and how the leaders have performed during the campaign. And where are the Bloody Marys, the crunchy obstacles scattered across this Canadian highway?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After that embarrassing moment when members of Canadian Parliament applauded a man who fought with the Nazis, MPs have elected a new Speaker of the House of Commons.
De Allelmer, Greg Fergus.
Greg Fergus was chosen by secret ballot. He is the first Black Canadian to take on the role. Elected as a Liberal MP, his job now requires him to be impartial, ensure parliamentary rules are followed, and perhaps the biggest challenge, maintain decorum. Mackenzie Gray reports.
A centuries-old tradition for a historic moment. Liberal MP Greg Fergus, now the 38th Speaker of the House of Commons, tasked with policing an unruly bunch.
Respect is a fundamental part of what we do here. We need to make sure that we treat each other with respect.
But that respect is rarely seen in a chamber prone to unparliamentary language and debate. But Fergus believes he can change that as the Commons referee if members are willing to work with him.
Nobody pays good money to go see the referee. They go to see the stars. You.
But those star players couldn't help themselves, turning congratulatory remarks to Fergus into stump speeches.
We must continue to work together to make life more affordable, to build more homes, to keep our democracy strong.
Government that is excessively powerful and costly, that has overburdened the population.
The NDP leader avoiding those partisan punches, congratulating Fergus on becoming the first Black Speaker.
There's going to be kids who maybe have come here and not seen themselves reflected on the walls. And that's going to change now.
A sentiment echoed by Liberal colleagues.
The fact that we now have the first Black Speaker in the history of our country is something to behold.
Fergus's colleagues voted him to the Speaker's chair by secret ballot, beating out 6 other MPs who all shared his desire for a more polite Parliament.
The Speaker has a responsibility and privilege to lead by example at all times.
Outside of becoming the new defender of decorum, Fergus gets a nearly $100,000 pay raise, bringing his salary to over $250,000 a year. And he gets to move into the Speaker's residence, the farm, in the beautiful Gatineau Hills. Donna?
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. In the U.S., the Speaker of the House of Representatives has been ousted from his job, and it's all because of fighting within the Republican Party. Conservative members of that party, led by a hard-right congressman from Florida, claim the Republican Speaker could not be trusted. And late today, the House voted to remove Kevin McCarthy, leaving the chamber without a leader. Joel Senick is watching the drama in Washington. Joel, how did this all play out?
This took a couple of hours this afternoon. Kevin McCarthy grasping to that position as Speaker of the House of Representatives, threatened by a small faction of far-right members of his own party who were successful in taking that gavel away from him. 216 people voted, members voted against him, 8 of them Republicans from his own party, removing McCarthy from the position.
It's hereby declared vacant.
A historic defeat, descending the U.S. Congress into a political tailspin. On Tuesday, Kevin McCarthy became the first ever Speaker of the House of Representatives, removed from his post by his colleagues.
Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word.
The motion to remove the former Speaker was brought forward by Florida Republican Matt Gaetz, a hardline conservative and McCarthy adversary who accuses the Speaker of working with Democrats to pass last-minute legislation last weekend to keep the government open.
They wanted to challenge me because I worked with the other side so America could go forward and government could stay open. You know, if you have to lose for something, I will always lose for the country.
McCarthy could only have 4 Republicans vote against him if every Democrat did as well. In the end, 8 members of his GOP caucus chose not to support him.
We need a speaker, ideally somebody who doesn't want to be speaker and hasn't pursued that at all costs for his entire adult life.
The White House says they hope the House quickly elects a new speaker and is chastising Republicans for causing chaos in Congress.
It is not helpful to the American people to have to see that going on.
McCarthy's reign as speaker ends as bumpy as it began. It took 15 rounds of voting over multiple days and a number of concessions to become elected back in January. One of those compromises allowed a single member to bring forward the motion to remove him from office.
He wanted the speakership so bad that he gave away the tool to have it taken away.
So the big question is what happens next? The Republican caucus met tonight to discuss just that, where McCarthy said he will not run again for Speaker of the House, meaning someone else will have to come forward. Right now, political experts say there is no front runner on the Republican side to do that. Donna?
More political drama to come. Joel Senick in Washington. Thank you. It is Election Day in Manitoba, and the outcome is expected to make history. One of these leaders will be the next premier, either incumbent Heather Stefanson, a progressive conservative, or NDP leader Wab Kinew, or the Liberals' Dougald Lamont, though he is considered to be a long shot. With me from Winnipeg ahead of our live election night coverage is Marnie Blunt. Marnie, polls close in a few hours. What kind of a campaign has this been?
Well, Donna, this is really set up to be quite an exciting night here and an exciting election. The Progressive Conservatives looking to hold on to power at the Manitoba legislature, while the NDP, they're looking to turn the province orange once again. And the Manitoba Liberals, meanwhile, are hoping to take away some of that vote and prevent either party from getting a majority. Now, the polls are favoring NDP leader Wab Kinew, and if he wins, he'll make history as not only the first First Nations premier in Manitoba, but also of all the Canadian provinces. His entire campaign focused on healthcare, including promising to reopen 3 Winnipeg emergency rooms, reversing a previous PC government decision.
I feel like it's a high honor that we get the opportunity to put our names on the ballot and to ask you, the people of Manitoba, to vote for our vision of fixing healthcare. We've done the campaigning, and now it's up to you, the people of Manitoba.
Progressive Conservative leader Heather Stefanson has fallen behind in the polls. A win for her would also be historic, though, making her the first woman premier voted in by Manitobans. She's standing by the decision that her government would not support the search of a landfill north of Winnipeg, where it's believed the remains of 2 Indigenous women are located. Her campaign has also centered around affordability.
Manitobans, the decision is up to you. An NDP who disregards the law, raises taxes, puts Manitoba in debt, and has no experience, or an experienced PC team who will make your life more affordable, make streets safer.
Meanwhile, Liberal leader Dougald Lamont has positioned his party as the alternative between the PCs and the NDP. But pollsters say it's likely much of the Liberal vote has fallen to the NDP. Lamont is even at risk of losing his seat in St. Boniface.
You can make sure that there's a minority government, and you are free to make it happen by voting Manitoba Liberal. You do not have to hold your nose and vote NDP to get rid of Heather Stefanson and the PCs. You can stop them both by voting Manitoba Liberal.
And this election has also already saw record-breaking advance polls with more than 200,000 Manitobans already casting their ballot ahead of Election Day. Donna?
Okay, could be an indication of interest tonight. Marnie Blunt in Winnipeg, thank you. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, is in Winnipeg, too. Hi there, David. You know, the Progressive Conservatives are hoping to win a 3rd term. This is Heather Stefanson's first time running as leader, though. What struck you about her campaign?
Well, listen, Donna, the PCs had to do this. They had to overcome the perception that the Progressive Conservative government, 7 years in power, was tired, lacking energy, had no new ideas. Did Stefanson do that? I don't think you can make the case that she did. Let's look at the last week of messaging from that campaign. We see these landfill billboards. Very odd issue to stake the survival of your government on. I think you lose as many votes as you get. A negative campaign that the PCs launched in the last week, attacking the character of New Democrats. And let's look at the leader herself, Heather Stefanson. She was in Winnipeg yesterday for the first time in 10 days. 10 days at the end of the campaign, and she's not here in Winnipeg, where all the campaigning, all the ridings are that matter. So Heather Stefanson really didn't seem to have her heart in it. By contrast, Wab Kinew and the NDP, very disciplined, very focused campaign, Donna.
So, David, where will this election be won and lost?
Well, as with any Manitoba election, it's Winnipeg. And I've got the results from the 2019 election on the board right now. The end of the night, the score was 36 for the PCs. NDP had 18. Now, the NDP need to steal some PC seats. And it turns out the seats they're all aiming at, I've got my hand over them, they're all seats held by ministers. So ministers have to fall in what I'm calling the blue wall of cabinet ministers. The health minister, for example, Audrey Gordon is in one of these. These three ridings here, probably the most conservative part of Winnipeg, all ministers, including the Premier's riding of Tuxedo right there, but two more ministers in the Northeast may be vulnerable. So if the NDP does that and they're aiming at it, then we get to 28 for the PCs, 26 for the NDP. 29 is the magic number for a majority. Now, as Marnie said, the NDP have been saying to Liberals, please, if you want change, you have to vote NDP. Liberals, come vote NDP. It's sort of a mirror from what happens with the federal system. And that means Dougal-Lamont's riding right here, Boniface. Wab Kinew, the NDP leader, has been in that riding 3 times. Put that one in the orange column. There's a riding up here in the north called McPhillips. A lot of Liberal votes there. If those Liberals come over to the NDP, put that one into the orange column. And then look where we're at. 28 for the NDP, 27 for the PCs. That's the math that sets Wab Kinew up to be the first First Nations person to be the premier of a Canadian province. Donna.
Okay, David Akin in Winnipeg. Thanks, David. There was commuter chaos in Toronto tonight. GO trains and Via trains in and out of Union Station, as well as CN's customer portal, all stopped working. CN Rail called it a system-wide failure. Kayla McLean is at Union Station in downtown Toronto. Kayla, tell us what happened.
Donna, things have died down a bit, but as you can imagine, major headaches for commuters in the thick of rush hour here at Union Station. Now, according to GO Transit, a CN network-wide system failure is to blame for the outage, affecting all rail corridors. That means GO Transit, Up Express, Via Rail, they were all experiencing delays, but some limited service is now up and running. Here at Union, trains are now running about every half hour. CN apologized in a statement explaining that it's currently dealing with an internet connectivity issue, and that along with Metrolinx and Via trains out of Union Station, its customer service portal has also been impacted as a result. CN, EXO, and Amtrak trains, however, are still up and running. They say while there is no indication of a cybersecurity issue at this point, they're still investigating the cause of the outage.
I just gonna have to wait and see. Like, there really isn't an alternative. I need to take a train, so Ubers are out of the question, really, at this point. They've jacked up their prices. We've already taken a look.
No, we have to get back to home and do many other stuff. And it's unfortunate, right? So we have to wait and see what is happening.
I'm fine. Doesn't matter when I get home. Like, I'll get there.
I have to go home and I have to pick up my son from his class. I'm stuck here. If I delay more than 10 minutes, they are going to bill me.
Now, at this point, no time has been given as to when trains will be fully up and running. Metrolinx advising passengers to seek alternative routes if they can. Now, Uber rates are also through the roof. We spoke with one viewer who told us that from Toronto to Hamilton, the going rate right now is $442. Donna.
Yikes. Kayla McLean in Toronto. Thank you. There has been a terrible bus crash near Venice, Italy. At least 21 people have died. 18 others are injured. It's reported the bus broke through a barrier, plunged off an overpass, fell onto power lines and caught fire. Local reports say the bus was carrying foreign tourists back to a campsite. The mayor calls the scene apocalyptic. Emergency crews are still there and there is no word on the cause. The sour relationship between Canada and India. Coming up, what the Indian government demands Canadian diplomats do by next week. The diplomatic rift between Canada and India is growing deeper. India has ordered 2/3 of Canada's diplomats in that country to leave by early next week. Things turned from tense to sour after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went public with allegations agents from the Indian government were involved in the killing of a BC Sikh leader on Canadian soil. Eric Sorensen looks at where this troubled relationship stands right now.
2/3 of the diplomatic corps at Canada's High Commission offices and elsewhere in India have been ordered out. It's an escalation the Prime Minister was hoping to avoid.
We're not looking to escalate, as I've said. We are going to be doing the work that matters in continuing to have constructive relations with India through this extremely difficult time.
A reduction in Canada's diplomatic staff in India could increasingly affect travel, trade, and business between the two countries.
A lot of different services provided by its diplomatic staff. Some would be consular, there would be trade and commercial officials. Of course, there would also be intelligence officers.
India's Prime Minister has dismissed allegations that his government was behind the murder in BC last June of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar, an advocate for an independent Khalistan. U.S. and other allies showed support for Canada's investigation, but have not been openly critical of India, a vital partner in counterbalancing China's growing power. Canada is learning a hard lesson about today's geopolitical relationships, says this former diplomat.
The world's power is shifting to a new geography where it's much harder to navigate these relationships. And you don't have the luxury in today's world of picking perfect friends.
On Tuesday, India raided the home of prominent journalists, cracking down on what it calls foreign propaganda. It's not connected to Canada's diplomatic row, but it is a sign to some of the Modi government's hardball tactics towards those who publicly criticize India.
But it's part of a broader trend we see in India over the last few years. There's been a suppression of civil liberties, particularly of activists and journalists and writers who are seen as critical of the government.
For now, Ottawa has few answers on what it should do next beyond quiet diplomacy.
We've been in close contact, continuing to engage on the question of our diplomatic freedom.
Both sides somehow have to show restraint and let some time pass, let it de-escalate.
And, says Arif Lalani, Ottawa clearly has work to do to find a way forward with India on the murder investigation. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
The U.S. is cracking down on potentially hazardous space junk. It has issued its first fine to a company that failed to move an old satellite to a safer place. The U.S. says it posed a risk to other satellites orbiting Earth. Dish Network has admitted liability and agreed to pay $150,000. And holy clamato juice, a celery spill closed part of Highway 400 in Ontario this morning. An entire truckload of it. Police arrived to take stock of the situation and decided to divert traffic until the Cheese Whiz truck arrived. I just made that last bit up. They actually cleaned up the celery and everything is fine. Financial fraud trial ahead. The founder of a fallen crypto company in court. Jury selection has begun in the criminal trial of fallen cryptocurrency king Sam Bankman-Fried. He's accused of orchestrating one of the biggest financial frauds in American history. Prosecutors say he stole $8.9 billion from his FTX customers to prop up his hedge fund, buy real estate, and make political donations. He was once seen as a leader in the crypto industry, but his company declared bankruptcy last year. He has pleaded not guilty to 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. Opening arguments begin tomorrow. And a groundbreaking trial began today for a former RCMP director, Cameron Ortis, who is accused of breaching national security. Ortis appeared in an Ottawa courtroom today, pleading not guilty to leaking top-secret information. He was the head of the RCMP's National Intelligence Coordination Center at the time of his arrest in 2019. He faces 6 charges, including 4 counts of violating the Security of Information Act. It's the first time a court has tested charges under the Security of Information Act. Ortis faces up to 14 years in prison. Next, why an Ontario First Nation is keeping tabs on Manitoba's election. People in Ontario can't vote in a Manitoba election, but many members of an Ontario First Nation are watching their neighbouring province with interest. One of their community members, Manitoba NDP leader Wab Kinew, could be the first First Nations premier of any province. Melissa Ridgen takes us to Anigaming. It's more than 300 kilometres east of Winnipeg, on the shores of Lake of the Woods, Ontario.
This is a long way from the buzz of the Manitoba campaign trail, but the Ojibways of Anigaming are heavily invested in the battle next door. where progressive conservatives and the NDP both hope to form the next government.
There's a guy from your community who could be the first premier, the first First Nations premier in a province.
That would be amazing. I didn't think I'd see that in my lifetime.
How do you do? I'm Wab Canoe.
NDP leader Wab Canoe went to school here, learning Ojibwe.
He grew up here for a while in our community here in Anigming with the family, and they still come here. You still see them here every year. He comes to our annual powwow. He brings his family and they dance, and it's always good to see him come back.
His parents moved the family to Winnipeg when Canoe was young. He's got no shortage of supporters back home, including the Cookums.
He's going to be the next premier, for sure. I believe it. I myself think it would be a real awesome thing if he won, because our community has been in a state of emergency for a long time. It would give our community members a lot of hope that anything is possible.
The community of 800 has, on average, a funeral every 3 weeks, many from overdose and suicide. Someone doing well is valued.
I've been chief for about 2 years now, and I've been telling everybody that I'm introducing Wab as the next future premier of Manitoba.
Most can only cheer from afar, but some can show their support at the ballot box.
I think we've got probably somewhere between 50 to 60 Onigiming members that actually live in Manitoba and will have the opportunity to vote.
Regardless of what Manitobans decide, Canoe is a star here.
Onigiming is very proud of him.
Melissa Ridgen, Onigiming First Nation, Ontario.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the CN Tower in Toronto. It will be lit up in blue tonight as the Toronto Blue Jays kick off this year's MLB playoffs in Minneapolis against the Minnesota Twins. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.